For me personally, I've always been someone that puts a lot of time into training, and trail running is a sport where time on your feet and the time spent out in the trails is the enjoyable part, because you get to see a lot of scenery and you get to be out in the bush. But at the same time, the more training you put in, for the most part, is the better that you're going to become as an athlete. So if you get out there and look at the most waterfalls you can and compete in the most events that you can, you're going to become better and you're going to enjoy the sport more. So I've been a part of trail running for only 2 years now, and it's taken 2 full years to actually understand the framework of how you go from beginning to becoming an actual athlete in the sport. And it's just because there's no framework in place right now that a young athlete can go, all right, there's a race in 6 months' time that's going to qualify me for another race and then another race, and then you can actually go and represent either your state or your country even. So yeah, at the moment, if we had a framework in place for maybe like a regional championships that funnels into a state championships and then Australian championships, and then actually having our trail running body represent the Australian body, and I think that would be really fantastic for the future of trail running. So I grew up on a small crop farm in Bundaberg and in Glasshouse Mountains shortly as well. And I have an older brother who's a couple years older, so I'd always sort of be trying to keep up with him, and he's always sort of 2 steps ahead. And we'd spend a lot of time out in the bush just running around, and we'd always pretend like something's chasing us, and we'd find the thickest bush to run through and sprint from one side to the other side. And sometimes it'd be like, the farm would be like 1 kilometre long, so you'd be running pretty far as a young fella. So yeah, probably the farming experience drew me back to trail running and running out in the bush. And I started off with a few bad experiences. So a couple of years ago, I was probably into some other activities that weren't as healthy, and turning up to events in not the best state of mind, I suppose, but still running really well and pushing really hard. And then realising my potential after turning up to events in not the best state and still performing really well. So that really shaped my view on becoming an athlete in the sport, and now I look at it as much more as a professional rather than as a hobby runner, I suppose. So at the moment, I think a national voice is important, because we have a lot of private organisations that run a lot of different events and very successful events, but we need someone to oversee why these particular events are then funneling into things like state, national and international championships. And also for elite athletes, having a national voice, but you can kind of rank people on their ability and get elite athletes running in the same events, which increases the competition in events. It gets people running faster, and that's really what we want in the elite athlete field, because we want Australia to be represented really well in the international field. There's a lot of really good athletes here, and a lot of them train by themselves or in very small groups, or go to small running camps to train, and it'd be really great if we could have a national body that oversees the elite athletes and helps them train together to then go on and improve even further. So firstly, we need to remove the thought that European trails are the best and we need to emulate that, and we've been trying to create races like sky racing that is, in Australia we just don't have those trails. We don't have the availability to have those crazy races, but what we do have, especially in Queensland, is the very tropical races where you have insanely muddy tracks with a lot of elevation, a lot of up and down, and a lot of heat. And I think once we find that niche, the world stage will look at us and go, wow, like these are some of the hardest events in the world. Yeah, they don't have the scrambling rocks and the really technical terrain, but come there for the heat and humidity and it's going to be a whole different ball game. Trail running is really important for the Olympic and Paralympic Games. Paralympic Games especially, because inclusivity in all sports is the first step towards creating a sport that everyone wants to be a part of. So in the Noosa Ultra Trail we have a lady that's doing a wheelchair race, and if other people can see what Paralympians can do, I'm sure they feel comfortable getting involved in the sport as well. So having trail running in the Brisbane Olympic Games and Paralympic Games will be important for the growth of trail running. So even if we don't hit the goal of actually being in the games, we're going to see huge growth in the sport, and that secondary effect is going to be just as important as actually being there, because once you grow the sport to that point, it mightn't be 2032, it might be 2036 or 2040 that it's actually in the games. And really, in the end, that's what we want, is growth in the sport.